Okay, that's fine. I mean, I don't know why I started asking about the capital of South Africa because I don't really care. You know what's interesting about the about South Africa is it has the Cape of Good Hope right at the bottom of it. Isn't that true?
It does, yeah. It
Because
does have that, yeah, yeah.
that is a very notable map point for me in my head as when I think back about my childhood and think about maps and stuff. I always
Yeah.
knew, like from really early on, I knew about the Cape of Good Hope. They played a significant role in my early childhood education, apparently. So
Eric, you also know it's called the Cape of Storms, right?
I'd heard that, but I hadn't remembered until you just said it right now.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of storms?
There are a lot of storms.
Mm. So you indicated basically that you're not ecstatic with your current employment situation. Let's say. Um, Is that an economy thing over there, or is it a Roz is not feeling like being a wage slave, or is it what?
I think Roz is struggling with the idea of wage slavery in general. Yeah. I'm a student, so I used to work as a teacher's assistant, but then my contract ended, and now for the next couple of months I need to finish my studies and find a job, hopefully.
Well, what kind of
So it's
debate?
very boring.
What kind of debate stuff they got over there already currently? Because there's a lot of debate programs that are expanding all over different places in the world. A lot of stuff in China, but you can milk the white people too. It's a joke. It's totally a joke.
Okay.
Because what I'm saying is like a lot of the companies, like the your sort of education type things, everybody is talking Asia, right? So
Right now,
right
well, they used to at least.
right now in the market for what I'm talking about, which is a specific kind of education, it's actually quite a it's got a huge amount of growth potential and it's growing very fast, and it's like competition debate at middle and elementary school level especially is growing super fast. High school is kind of impacted out. But the point is, people in the U.S., companies in the U.S. right now, like my company, are going nuts, sending people to places to open debate programs places. But mostly China, mostly Asia, all over Asia. But what I'm
That is
saying is,
incredible. Wow.
what I'm saying is, South Africa's got moneyed parts too, right? And you guys like your kids too. You love your children too. So, I mean, you should set that shit up there. And like you've already know me, and I'm more integrated into this community than you might imagine. So, I mean, there's a lot of access to a lot of like international debate organizations. You can set up tournaments. See, this is the key thing. You set up tournaments. You have their kids compete against other kids and beat them, and then all of a sudden your parents want to throw money at you. Okay, so it's a much better way to go. You can be an entrepreneur, be a debate coach. I bet you that shit's way underdeveloped in South Africa, and it's the best educational pedagogy that exists.
No, I agree. People need to learn how to speak and think and hear things. Thank you for the business model, Eric. I will seriously consider it. uh, the concept is a bit out of my comfort zone, obviously, but I agree with you. It would be very useful in South Africa to do something like that, to get people involved in things like that. Though I do want to point out that the majority of people living in this country are severely undereducated. The majority of them don't really have money to throw at people, and also believe that they shouldn't have to throw money at anybody, that they should be given things for free. So I suppose that it's a bit different than in the US, maybe. I don't know how. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
look, here's the deal. If you're existing in a society where you basically have entrenched problems with or it's not necessarily a problem, but you have an existing status quo of wealth inequality that's dramatic. It's true that you're going to have masses of people who are not able to afford your services. But it's also
No, of
true.
course, but there's another. There's another problem, Eric. The problem is that English is a third or fourth language for the majority of the people living in this country. I mean, it's not even my first language. So there are a lot of barriers when it comes
what
to
are the
getting
rich
people talking
people?
and
But what are the rich people focusing on?
The rich people themselves always.
And their kids, right?
I do believe their kids are raised to maintain the status quo, as all rich kids are.
That's not true. That's totally not true. Not all rich
You don't
kids
think
maintain.
so?
Not to maintain the status quo.
I believe it's true.
But why?
Why is it true? It's just what I believe. It's what I've seen. It's what I've experienced. Obviously, I might definitely be wrong, and I'm quite young, so I haven't really experienced everything. You've obviously had a lot more experience than I do.
Well, I mean, you could argue. I guess my point would be, you could argue that you could say like, well, it's everything that you're taught to value is part of keeping that status quo in place. But the reality is, each of us is taught all sorts of different values, regardless of our social background, and
then we go to school, and those values are broken down and they're replaced with very specific values.
Or your resistance is kindled and fueled, and you're also endowed with weapons at the same time to fight back at them. It's not like, look, I grew up.
Debating would definitely be one of those weapons. I agree. But the desire for debate's also a value, and one must first assess whether or not that desire is.
You assume it's adversarial.
Represented sufficiently within your population.
You assume it's adversarial beyond the scope of the debate space, but it's not. You're not debating as an argument, like where I'm going to fight with you. You're debating. It's a value, sure, but it's also a pedagogy, which is to say, it's a teaching methodology. And I can tell you from experience, having been a classroom teacher, having been a debate coach, that whatever method they're using in your schools or our schools or anyone else's schools that is not debate, except for math and closed system stuff, is vastly inferior to competition debate, because competition debate puts the ownership of the whole thing on the kids. Then it's not about getting a grade. It's not arbitrary, right?
No, amen. I completely agree with you. Yeah, preach. I agree. But I think one would have to be very careful about trying to start things like this in South Africa. Or I don't even know if, obviously some of the very wealthy prep schools have debating teams and they do pursue some kind of a debating, but this probably is only representative of about 2% of the population of children. I mean, this is the rest. I mean, South Africa is two different countries in one. I mean, you have the really well-developed urban centers, and then you have rural South Africa, which doesn't look much different from the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. And these are the children that grow up to be representative of the majority voter. These are the people who have the fate of the country in their hands. These are the people who need to be reached. So there are actually huge infrastructure problems as well to this kind of setup. And I think one definitely needs to do it, and one needs to push for it, and it needs to be pushed from a lot of sides. But one needs to be very careful about how you approach the subject. Who are you going to target? Are you going to go to which, a lot of these children who go to private schools anyway and are exposed to this kind of idea of debate, and obviously get the better education therefore, these children, they tend to leave the country as soon as they're capable of it, and they take with them all of that.
Okay, then Braz, okay, look, what I was saying is the money thing, because that's what I thought you would be primarily motivated by. If you're primarily motivated by the social justice thing, then start debate teams for the poor black kids.
Yeah, that's what we talk about. Yeah, okay. Sorry, Eric.
I mean, look, the thing is, I try to do both to a certain extent. That I have free kids on my team. I have some free kids. For whatever, I don't offer that as sort of justification. I don't feel obligated to do that. But to the extent that I like a kid and I want them on my team, then if they're not able to pay for it, then of course they're not going to pay for it. because I want the kid. But it's about that. It's kind of selfish, right? It's like, I don't really care about money very much. I'm not out to gouge your parents. I don't care. But if you're one of mine and you can't pay for it, then you don't have to pay for it, and that's it. But if you're not one of mine, and I don't want you to be one of mine because you're super good, then you should pay for it, usually. Right?
Yeah, no, definitely.
I'm not a bad capitalist person or something. I'm a terrible businessman who doesn't like to have to pay attention to things like the books and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So.
No, I get it.
You know. I don't know. I feel the need to defend my capitalism or something. Look, your country's all fucked up.
You don't have to defend it unless you really want to. I didn't apply anything. I wasn't attacking anything.
I know, Brad. Look, the thing is, your country has got to be, I know, no doubt, all fucked up because of all that whole shit. You've got the white people still have all the money, right?
Yes, and white population has actually decreased quite a lot since over the past 20 years as well. So it's become more concentrated.
They're doomed, right? All the white people are gonna leave, right?
Either that, or I guess either that, or I suppose that is the one of the things that people talk about around dry fires. Yeah. They're
gonna take all the money and leave.
Okay, no, but this is not true, because remember now, one of the reasons why apartheid ended in 1994 was because a lot of capital had already left the country, and they were waiting for people to relax those restrictions on capital markets so that a lot of white capital could leave. And after that, the majority of the white people here aren't famously wealthy, but in comparison to some of the poorest people here, they're freaking rich. But it's not like they can even afford to immigrate to another country. I mean, those aren't options that a lot of white people have.
You're white, aren't you? Are you white?
I'm white, yes.
Okay. You sound white.
White.
You sound white. Did I tell you about that girl on the plane to Russia? I already told you that, huh?
No, you didn't tell me.
Oh, a long time ago, I rode on a plane to Russia, and there was a girl from South Africa, and she was sitting next to me on the plane. I talked to her for a long time. She had the same exact accent as you have, and when was it? It had to be fucking 95, 96? I don't know. And she explained, she basically just sat there and explained justifications for apartheid to me, right? Like, they're tribal people, and if we weren't keeping them separate, they'd have wars with each other. And she was saying shit like that. But I think apartheid must have just ended or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Definitely.
It tripped me out. I wasn't like judging her or anything. I was just like, wow, this is.
Did she convince you? Was it a convincing argument? Look, the apartheid government was a fascist. Like it was fascist. I mean, most of the people had no freaking idea what was going on in their country. Whether you were black or white, you were kept completely separate from one another. You weren't allowed to enter various areas.
No.
It was very strict all the way around. It was very brutal. There was no real freedom of information there. People didn't really know anything. Obviously, it was terrible.
Yeah, well, she was speaking a set of arguments, and I was young. I was like pretty fresh out of college, but she was speaking words that she had learned, you know? She was speaking arguments she had learned and practiced.
Yeah.
And I could tell
right?
that then. Yeah, but she was like a pretty girl, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna fight with her, you know? So anyway, but
how about you, Eric? You had an opportunity to help her. Let it slip through your fingers.
I wasn't qualified. I wasn't even ready to make the arguments yet. Really, frankly, I was just like...
The DNTP that complains about not being ready to do something.
Well, I did. Yeah. I'm saying in retrospect. In retrospect. At the time, I'm sure I thought I was ready, but I just thought I didn't want to fight with her.
Oh, right. Of course, sorry, I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Didn't mean anything by that.
See, I'm ready to jump on it right now.
Oh, Well, next time you definitely should. I think it's always good to challenge these kinds of things because there was a lot of propaganda in schools back then, and I do believe white people were taught a lot of terrible things about other races. I believe they were taught in school that they were superior in many ways. Yeah. So it's
Well, they have
a
to
very
come up.
difficult situation how to deal with that entire thing.
And they got to come up
What?
with some. They have to come up with some explanation for it. See, the thing is, what South Africa did much more effectively than the American South is South Africa actually kept the black people and the white people separate, and so you didn't have a lot of
But, yeah.
half and halves. You didn't have a lot of halves, right?
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, if you try to maintain that society and they start breeding with each other, it's going to be impossible. Because some white person with money and power is going to have a partially black kid that they're not going to want to sell into slavery. And they're going to be like, fuck you, this is my kid. That's white too now. And then pretty soon it's like 3/4 black is white now too, you know? So,
Yeah.
so you guys...
What was also quite funny is the way that the government had to continuously reclassify people as being black or being white or whatever like that. It's very funny.
Did they?
There are a couple of white people who for some reason look very tanned or whatever. They were continuously being classified as being colored or being Indian. It caused a lot of problems. So it was a very hilarious kind of... I think it must have been quite funny watching the government try and maintain these policies. I think they must have been exhausted.
Well,
I think it must have been very... Yeah.
Do you know, in the U.S. there was a court case, I forget the guy's name, he was riding on a train, it was a segregated train, and he was told to go to the colored car, and he insisted he was a white man, and it went to the Supreme Court, and they ruled in his favor, and they ruled they had violated his property rights, namely his right to the property of being a white man and what that entitled one to, right? So, and then as a consequence, they've made this. Congress had to make a rule that explained what the different races were, and it's the most hilarious document you will ever read because it is very, very precise. It says, it's like, it ends with things like, it says things like, if you were the son of a Portuguese mother and a white Canadian, but not a white Canadian plus a native Canadian, those aren't white people. If you're half Japanese mother and a German father, you're okay. But if it's like that, the whole way through.
That is crazy. Yo, that stuff is funny. That is hilarious. How much effort that they must have put into coming up with that? It's
well, why didn't somebody say,
intense.
guys, I'm beginning to wonder about how meaningful these distinctions we're drawing are. Did nobody wonder that?
Yeah, but I'm sure. No, but I'm sure many people did. I just don't think it got the airtime it deserved.
Well, lack of information fluidity.
If you control the flow of information, we didn't have the internet back then or anything like that.
Yeah, information fluidity is huge. People underestimate the impact of it.
Yeah. It's epic. Anyway,
You gotta go? I don't hear you anymore. I don't know what happened to the audio. I know you're running out of internet time. This is a pretty good length video. Why don't we stop it here? I can't hear you anymore. And we'll try it again next time, and I'll upload this one right now. It won't take long to upload either. Can you hear me? Can I hear you? No, but you can maybe hear me. 18 minutes, about 20-minute long video here. If you can still hear me, goodbye.